All right, the time being 8:02 a.m. on Tuesday, March 7th, I'd like to call to order the Westborough Economic Development Committee meeting. First on the agenda today, we have the minutes from our February 7th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Or actually, did you circulate those? I don't think we did, right? Yeah, so those are not on the agenda. Nobody reviewed them. So we will table that to next month. Next on the agenda is the discussion and potential vote to support for the DPW article at the town meeting, Article 27, the Stormwater Management Program. I believe Derek is here to educate us on that.
I'll do my best.
All right.
Derek Sari, Assistant DPW Director here and proxy for Director Parent. Sorry, he had a prior engagement, so he couldn't make it. So Article 27 and 28 are on the warrant. We've been working on this for about 15 to 18 months, the stormwater utility fee. We got a grant through Mass DEP to do a townwide culvert assessment, and the part of that grant also was to take a look at the development of a stormwater utility fee. Stormwater utility fees aren't new. There's thousands of them across the country. There's dozens of them in the Commonwealth. And as I've said previously, back in 2007, the then town coordinator, I actually brought that to his attention. It was pretty early at that stage that we should be looking at this as a development. It's important because water and sewer are major utilities, and most people know that. They wake up in the morning and they need them. Drainage has always been a forgotten utility throughout the country. So this is setting the stage to gain recognition that drainage is important, that it's an important asset, and that it needs to have a dedicated and stable funding mechanism. So the bylaw itself merely allows the Board of Selectmen to implement a fee. There is no fee that's going to be implemented right after town meeting, nothing at all. The earliest we project a fee, if everything goes correctly, would be July of 2024, so fiscal 25. So what we did is we looked at our funding gap. So we're proposing about 1.5 million to be raised through the fees to fund our gap. And we identified 4 major areas in our gap. So stormwater engineer, many communities are now shifting towards an individual or actually an entire department solely dedicated just for stormwater. We're not looking for an entire department. We're looking for an individual to come on board at the DPW to take a look at stormwater engineering, permitting, not only permitting for ourselves, but looking at permits for other boards. And that's important because we spend a significant amount of time in our engineering division reviewing other applications that come in, and that's a lot of time. And so when you spend that amount of time, that means there's a cause and effect. Something else isn't being done. So for this committee, I know the comprehensive wastewater management plan is very important to kind of narrow that down. We just don't have a whole lot of time to spend on it. So having somebody dedicated just for stormwater helps multiple boards, not just the DPW. So that would be funded through the enterprise account. Increased operations and maintenance, we have a gap there now. Outside engineering, they would also be assisting us in perhaps a culvert design. This is what we project, is that we do design, permitting, construction. Design, permitting, construction. It's just a cyclical, every year that's what you do. We do it for water, we do it for sewer out of that account. Capital improvements would be the actual implementation in the field. And then the purchase of equipment as well, just like every other enterprise account functions. So very early on, 6 or more months ago, we met with the finance team, in-house staff, to come up with, there are different scenarios in terms of how the billing gets set up. And so we looked at the tiered approach. It's mostly predominantly for residential, but it's a 3-bucket tier based on the amount of impervious. So like water and sewer, you have your meter on your house. So how do you measure or quantify the impervious? That's the best way to do it, is how much is impervious is on your property that's contributing to the overall stormwater in the community at the end of the day. And that's a standard industry funding mechanism to measure that. So we have about 4,800 developed parcels in town. Of those 4,800 developed parcels, about 81% of them represent residential, but over 70% of the impervious in town is on the commercial, industrial, high-density residential side. And they get billed on a different type of billing unit. So the average single family in the tier 1 is $57 per year. Tier 2 is $115 per year. And then tier 3, your larger 6,000 to 10,000 square feet of impervious on your residential is about $172 per year. Those numbers aren't solidified as of right now, but the data is there. So these are pretty decent numbers. We don't see them going wildly in opposite directions, which is what Article 28 is, which is the implementation side. There's a whole nother side that we have to spend that amount of period from town meeting if the bylaw is passed through July of 2024 to refine the data, speak again with everybody to get the rate schedule set by the select board. That's a whole process in and of itself. We have to figure out abatements, exemptions. There are credit manuals. So on the commercial side, for example, if you've done a lot of stormwater BMPs on your property, the burden of proof is upon the parcel owner, once the credit manual has been developed, to say, hey, listen, I've invested this on my property. I've met all of the DEP regulations for stormwater best management practices, and we would itemize that in a credit manual, which is done throughout every municipality that has this, so that they capture some credits on that. Many of you have, well, maybe Mark, yourself, you might have asset managers on board, right? Mm-hmm. I've dealt with many, 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 many asset managers on the larger portfolio properties in this town. And that's what we are. We are a very large asset manager. And again, the drainage part is what escapes the funding side of it. We're competing all the time. So just to give you a quick example, we just did a water main replacement project on Flanders Road, portion of Flanders Road and Sampson Drive. That was slightly over $1 million to do that 1 mile of drainage, of water main replacement. We currently have to do a culvert replacement in town, and it's about $900,000 to replace the culvert. Well, it's only about 40 lineal feet. Well, a mile is 5,280 feet. So it cost about $1 million to do a mile water main and about $900 just to do one culvert. So not all assets, when they need to be replaced, are treated equally. They're complicated. There's a lot of permitting involved. We have a lot of utilities that we're driving over that people just don't think about. That annoying manhole is what people think about. It's not what's below the ground. And to try to squeeze these new culverts in, it's not easy because you're competing with everything else that's there. So that's why it's very costly, and we need a dedicated fund to do this. So for you all on the commercial, industrial, and the high-density residential, yes, that's where the vast burden will be imposed on the user fee because they have the most impervious in town. So just for a quick example, the largest impervious property in town, 4,400 Computer Drive, 1.3 million square feet of impervious. It's quite large. You multiply that out, it's about $38,000 a year. That would be the largest. Second largest, Cumberland Farms, and then a residential, and then and then Bay State Commons, and then some of the shopping plazas, and then it gradates down. So we kind of looked at our top 20 just to kind of see where they're located. They're scattered throughout, but it's pretty much, that's the highest one right now, would be 4,400 Computer. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, high level. There is vast amount of information that's posted on the website. We've had multiple meetings. Everything's posted. Next Monday, direct to payment, and Wooden and Kern, our consultant, along with Westborough TV, will be doing another program about 20 minutes long, where we'll be taking some of the questions that we got out of the 2 forums that we did back in February and convert those questions more into illustrations so that they can be posted. Maybe taking some examples both on the commercial side and on the residential side and showing that and what the difference is if we just came to town meeting and competed with everybody else every year to add $1.5 million to our budget, which isn't feasible and doesn't even line up with the goals of how we run our own operating budget, so.
All right. Well, thank you for the overview, Derek. Any questions? I know, Mark, we're all going to be looking to you and your thoughts and opinions on this. I'm sure you guys have spent a lot of time evaluating and considering this.
Yes, in fact, we have. We've been working with Derek doing this for 15 to 20 years. It's Derek's hot issue.
Yeah.
And it's important, and it really hit high gear in, I'm trying to think, it was about 10 years ago now, where we had that storm that it just rained and everything was flooded out. Yeah. And on Route 9 and Freiburg Parkway, that pond overflowed, went on to Route 9 and ran all the way down Route 9. And I mean, everything we had was Washington Street had a 2-foot, river just going down it. It just bypassed all the drainage. And after that, Carruthers spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, opening up a lot of the channels that were blocked. I'll say the worst offender is the state of Massachusetts. I mean, we have to go after them. They have catch basins. I don't know if they cleaned it out yet, but I know on Connector Road, which people think is Flanders Road, but it's Connector Road there was grass growing out of their catch basins. That's how bad things were. So, Carruthers spent a lot of money, and I'm glad that they would do a credit for this. But especially on the new projects, Concom requires us, and they're flexible if you can't do it, but one of the requirements that's unique to Westborough is when you build something, the rule is you can't have any more water leave your site than what's already there. So if anything's being built and the Concom, unless there's ledge or some reason you can't do it, we're not adding any more, flood, and everything is designed for 100 and 500 year floods, and let's take 4400. We used to own 4400. When Amazon went through the permitting, they're expanding all their drainage, their retention. They're meeting new zoning. I mean, the property was grandfathered prior to that, but now with the work they're probably going to do, they have to meet new requirements. So I guess it depends on how much it's going to cost and the credits. And I'm thinking, okay, you have this large building, 4,400. As right now, there's enough parking for 2,800 parking spaces. There's a roof that's 300,000 feet. But that, especially the roof, that, was a good thing to get clean water to get recharged. So let's say Amazon goes through and does their work. They're keeping the same amount of coverage, basically, that they have now. Is it fair to charge them $38,000 a year if they have a pretty, latest and greatest site versus we have neighbors that don't do anything? And we end up getting the flood because we own a lot of property downhill as well, and we got flooded. I spent an evening at 40 Washington Street keeping the water out of that building, and it's because a lot of the properties at the time, before Derek got really involved, didn't have drainage, and the state, filled up a lot of the channels with sand from their roads. So, is it going to be, fair in that to go after? I mean, one of the worst offenders. You know why one of the reasons the water overflowed the ponds on Freiburg Parkway and went down Route 9 is because the Mass Electric building, which is BJ's, they never did anything in the detention pond since it was done in the 60s. And if you go there now, you see this big, it looks like a nice swampy wetland. Well, that was their detention basin. What happens is our detention basin drains into that one. And if that one fills up, our water has nowhere to go. So it takes a long time to drain. When you get a big storm like that, your water is already over, and it just, went onto Route 9 and down. I think a lot of that's is going to be corrected when they do the work, but, it just goes to show that everybody, so I support the credit manual part, because why charge people that aren't contributing to the problem or even helping it, subsidizing people? And then finally, I understand having someone review. These things are complicated. It takes a lot of time. I know Derek has spent a lot of time with drainage type issues, but one of the things I'm concerned with is, if they hire someone and then we go to bill something and we're just paying somebody to do a third-party review anyway. So someone's doing most of the work. We give the town the money so that there's no conflict. The town hires them. But I think there should be a credit for that as well. If Amazon does something and they needed to have it reviewed and they go to a peer review, then maybe against that $38,000 should be a credit for the peer review, because, if you're paying for someone and you're doing peer review. And the other thing is maybe just go with peer review for everything. And people, I know I'm going on, but people can't know everything. I mean, some of these are big projects. They come along. We as a builder, we want to get the deal. We want to get started. It's what time of year you start makes a lot of difference. And sometimes having a peer review is the way to go,
So I think the question here, though, is Article 27, if I understand it correctly, gives the select board the authority to establish a fee. It doesn't specify what that fee is at this point, right?
That is correct.
That's still to be determined.
That is correct.
So the question in front of us today is, do we support this article? And do we want to support? Do we want to take a vote on it? We don't necessarily have to. It does have some implications on some of the larger businesses in town, and obviously residents as well, but how do people feel on the board about the article, and is this something that we want to take a vote on and see if we support it or not?
So I think we should take a vote on it. I think, as you were saying earlier, it's an important thing. Everyone likes to wake up in the morning and have everything working, and this is all part of that same system. So I think it's something that's not going to go away. It's only going to become an issue and then become a bigger issue if it's not at least looked at. And this doesn't set an actual fee on anyone. This is just saying, okay, we can do it, and then we can evaluate at that point how we want to distribute fees and credits, I guess, at that point. And that could be a larger discussion, but at least allow the select board to have that power.
Yeah, and Derek, can you remind, what is Article 28?
28 is if 27 passes,
Yeah.
and 28 is a seed of money, 150,000.
Okay.
Our
Okay.
consultant comes back on. We got a lot of data to refine the credit manual establishment.
Okay, so
the
that'll help
abatement,
you-
The exemptions, all that then gets
Yeah.
packaged together,
Figure
where
out
we
the
then
cost.
go back and speak with
Determine.
everybody again.
Yeah, okay.
So
So-
it's a lengthy process.
Is it suffice to say that at some point in the future, if this article is passed, that the EDC will have some, I guess, input into how you determine your fees for this?
Yeah, so basically, if we're looking to, and Christie help me, because the fiscal and calendar can get, if we are looking to have our first bill in July of '24, our budget process in October of this year needs to define what our budget request would be in the enterprise account to start our budgeting in October of 2023 to be ready for 2024 fiscal '25.
Yeah, so because we prepare our budgets in the fall,
Right.
have it ready for December, and that'll be for FY '25.
Okay.
So really, this implementation part pretty much has got to get wrapped up by September.
Right, right,
Like, this
Yeah.
summer, we're going to be working on it.
yeah.
Is this like a tax override, like for schools, or is this just a fee?
It would be set up similar to an enterprise fund, so it's a
Mhm.
fee, and it would be separately collected and spent through the enterprise account, similar to water and sewer.
So right now we have water, sewer, country club, and cable, I
So
think.
yes, it's a user fee, but, multiple
Dedicated, it,
users.
yeah, it can only be spent on stormwater, it can't. So the beauty is that it's not competing. Like just this morning, I have an issue and I had to go to Putnam Pipe and the pipe's so expensive and they're like, well, where are we getting the money from? I'm like, just go get it, cause I gotta get this job done. We'll figure it out when we get back to the ranch, we'll figure it out, but
Then you
that
gotta wait
goes
18
away.
months for it.
It just goes away, that competing interest. And most of our assets, just, stormwater, average life expectancy, 50-ish years. You get into these subdivisions that are the first under the Subdivision Control Act, 1955 forward, the stuff is bad.
Yeah.
It's all corrugated metal, it's so far past its life expectancy. Unfortunately, we do our best, but I gotta pave these roads too, but I can't blow the whole thing up. I only have so much Chapter 90 money to pave. So we're doing the best we can and go over it.
All right. Any other
Yeah.
questions for Derek?
Just, I guess, a comment. Yeah, I think we've been handling this, tactically for so long. I think this makes a lot of sense. We can really be strategic about, instead of coming for, individual projects every year, it really doesn't allow you to, plan or to change course if something occurs, it's earmarked for something very specific, so this allows you to handle things in the best way you see fit every year, and as things change over time. I think there is a lot of discussion that needs to be had about credits and how everything's applied, and we have time to figure that out, but I really do believe that the creation of the bylaw makes a lot of sense. So, and you guys have done a tremendous amount of work on this. Thank you very much.
It's gained so much traction that even DEP, which they can be challenging in many aspects of the umbrellas that DEP has, recognizes the importance in our giving a 100,000 gallon credit on our Water Management Act, which is on the drinking water supply. So it's kind of unusual that the stormwater side of DEP is relating itself to the drinking water side of DEP because they are trying to get municipalities to do this. It also affords us the ability to be super competitive on grants. When a grant comes out and we're looking at the requirements, and I have in-kind, well, where am I getting it? Boom, I can get it immediately. So you are highly more competitive on that. So.
If no other comments or questions, or anyone want to make a motion?
A motion to, I guess, draft a letter of support for Articles 27 and 28 for the town meeting in March.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All right. We'll have to do a roll call because we do have Scott on Zoom, so I'll start. Alexander, yes?
Zeph, yes?
Kenny, yes.
Varro, yes.
Keo, yes?
Leonardo, yes.
Scott?
Ready, yes.
Awesome. All right, it's
Excellent.
unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Thanks,
Derek.
Derek. Thanks very
Appreciate
much,
it. Coming
Derek.
in. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Next on the agenda is the discussion and potential vote for support for articles at the town meeting, Articles 32 and 33, which are some zoning bylaw articles. Zach?
So I believe that these article numbers have changed since I released the agenda. Now we are speaking about Articles 33 and 34 on the latest town meeting warrant. Article 33 is an article that makes many revisions to the zoning bylaws. Some of the revisions are not substantive in meaning or intent, meaning that they, sort of just clarify words that are there or grammatical changes or things like that. But there are several specific revisions that the planning board is proposing. Specifically, and I believe Jim has talked to this board about this in the past, this article would specify that signs need to be taken down. I'm trying to find the exact language here. If you just give me one moment. Apologies, there are several changes.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody can talk to what working with general code means and sort of, because it is kind of a group we hired outside us, and that's why there's so many changes.
Yeah, so I guess while Zach's looking at that, I'll since I was on the working group that kind of went through this, what we did is the town elicited general code to go through the form of the bylaw as it exists now, the zoning bylaw. And what the first task was is to just re-enumerate it, if you will, so to reorganize it. So General Code is the company that we hired. They actually sponsor an online e-code system, software system that we would be part of. So it's just, with their help, they advise us how would we reorganize the bylaw. So that was the general intent of this. And then we could, for fee every year, if there's a zoning change, have them update it and be part of the E-code. So the main gist of this thing was not to change the intent of the bylaw. So even though there's quote-unquote substantive changes, some of the substantive changes are things like changing the word selectmen to select board. So some people would see that as substantive, some wouldn't. So those are all part of there's like 70 some odd changes, but most of those were wordsmithing, if you will. So there was no real intent to change the bylaw. It was to reorganize it and make it more in keeping with how other towns present the bylaw. So that was the main gist of this, and we spent quite a bit of time going through word by word, unfortunately, every word in the document. And then if there was redundancy or something that was a conflict, we try to straighten that out as well. Because it tends to get chopped up every time you make one change a year and just implement it into the bylaw. So a lot of that was, for lack of a better word, kind of wordsmithing the bylaw and trying to reorganize it. So that was the main gist of the article. A couple of things that Zach were mentioning were independent of this. The planning board brought forward some sign bylaw changes. One of them was to allow projecting signs in the downtown area. I don't recall which article it ended up being. And the
That's
other
Article
one is,
34.
okay. And that may have encompassed the one that about the changes in when a business moves out as well.
For Article 33.
Sorry, and when you say they're creating an E-code, does that mean it's going to be like searchable online, or?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So what would happen is that General Code would host this software is called E-code. Other towns use it. So you would be able to, right now what we do is we just put a written, well, not a written, but a PDF version of the zoning code online. I don't know how searchable or functional that is, but with the E-code it is searchable by word, phrase, and they would maintain that for us as a town as long as we wanted to.
That way. So Article 32 is the replacing the zoning bylaws. So that's the reorganization that Fred's talking about and the renumbering. Article 33 has the more substantive changes, and there really are many changes throughout the document the General Code had identified. So the reason that they were split up was that the first one being non-substantive, we didn't want them to be commingled and then have potentially the reorganization fail. And then Article 34 is the signage update, though I'm noticing
So-
that the article information is incorrect. So I think that's where you were getting.
Well, no, and so I think where I was getting, the reason why I suggested that we look at Article 33 is because point 70 in Article 33, and I apologize if not everyone has it up, but I can read it. Section 8.2 G2 is amended as indicated that, and this is the language that has been struck: a non-conforming sign which is removed or abandoned for longer than 30 days or destroyed by more than 35% shall not be replaced unless it complies with this bylaw. The proposed new language would be that once a business closes, any non-conforming sign must be removed immediately and any new sign must conform. And so this is a continuation. Jim had spoke to the board several months back when the planning board was thinking about making this change, basically requiring that signs come down once a business closes. I knew that the board had some, opinions about that language. And so, I wanted to suggest that you guys discuss it and, either recommend that the EDC supports the article, does not support the article, or takes no action. What I will say is that this is not separate of all of the other changes that are included, many of which are thoughtful and, well-founded. So, as we discuss this, keep in mind that voting no to not support the article would mean that the other sections that have been amended, that you would also be saying no to that as well.
I believe we could also recommend an amendment to the article if we wanted to strike out something.
I think I'd need more clarification on the article, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of stuff in there that we're not aware of or we're not familiar with at this point. What you did mention about the non-conforming signs, I guess a question I would have, Fred, I don't know if it's you or whoever, but I understand if there's let's call it a retail tenant who has a non-conforming sign and they move out and they have to leave. But what if you have a non-conforming multi-tenant pylon sign that whether it's too large or it's internally illuminated or whatever, and one of the tenants moves out, how does that affect the bylaw? How does this bylaw affect that? And you have other tenants that are on this non-conforming sign.
So that's a good question. I really didn't get, I don't know if I was brought deeply into this conversation on how this would be enforced.
Yeah.
So if I back up a step, if I may, one, I think, as Sean had alluded to, the board could also vote to support the warrant less that one particular item, if the board feels strongly one way or another on that. It would be a difficult bylaw in some cases, especially just what you mentioned. I hadn't even thought about that, is if one component of the sign or one resident tenant moved out, how that affects the whole sign. I don't know that we actually contemplated that. So there's a lot of twists and turns on how you'd implement this thing and how it'd be enforced.
I have a question. I'm assuming that it would be incumbent upon the building owner, the business owner, to pay for the removal of the sign. Is that
Well, it all depends on how you write up the lease with
Right.
the tenant.
right?
If I was a landlord, I would, and I'm sure Mark would do the same thing. In the lease, you give the tenant the right to install a sign, but upon lease expiration, they have to remove it, that sort of thing.
Unfortunately, if I may,
Yep.
unfortunately, what would happen is when most businesses move out, they don't really care too much about the building.
That's what I'm
Right.
thinking.
At that
yeah.
point in
Right.
time, they're not really looking to take an expense.
Right.
Right.
To
So
move
unless
out.
you're holding a security deposit, it's gonna be out of the pocket of the landlord anyway.
Right, so, a case in point is Cork and Grain. When they moved out, the sign, which we had tried to attempt to have them repair for some time, they moved out. Luckily, somebody's moving in, and we're hoping to have that sign changed. But that would be an example where if nobody moved in there, it'd be a push. Now I'd have to go to the landowner and try to force them, because Cork and Grain no longer exists. I'm not even sure how I'd get a hold of them.
Right.
That's
And
what I'm thinking.
Even if,
That's-
yeah.
Also, in that case, I think it would extend to the bottled liquor sign right, as well on the.
Yeah, so this
Questioning.
gets very complicated, because now I'm chasing signs that have been around for a bazillion
Yeah.
years,
Right.
trying to get them out. Again, it's gonna go back to almost a complaint-driven enforcement, that if a sign exists in the middle of nowhere, it's not how we've interpreted the sign bylaw up to date, but I don't know exactly how to answer some of these questions. Sometimes a bylaw gets to be, I don't want to say completely unenforceable, but difficult to enforce at best. And that kind of would be under this realm. There's some merit to it, I don't disregard it, but
It sounds like the standardization part of this would kind of weed out some of the problems in some way, at least in the downtown area, because it sounds like as businesses come through, assuming that there's going to be some turnover, at some point at some of these businesses, that signs will begin to become standardized as businesses come in and out of these buildings. Obviously, there's going to be some changes when Todd talks about multiple, you can get into 1,000 things, but I guess in the spirit of what the rule is, I guess the idea is to get everything standard in the downtown area, and then have your exceptions to the rule, I guess, like everything else, just like there are exceptions to the current bylaw. If you think of it right now, there's 15, probably 20 signs in town that are exceptions to the current rules. So it's,
Probably a lot more.
yeah, probably more,
A lot
but,
more.
no, there's probably hundreds. that
Yeah,
are
I know, I was
exceptions.
being nice. But I'm just thinking right in my eyesight here, signs you could have a question on, whether they were signs that were existing, they got changed in the last 2 or 3 years, that in this bylaw have been changed to a standard in the construction process, I guess, of those even, the real estate company here, Sotheby's, that has the big sign that sticks out, they just put a new plastic on, which is perfectly fine, but I think this law would take that down to
Correct.
everyone being standard, and that makes it at least even, and then you deal with the offshoots as we have always, which is, common sense, I think, at some level you have to use.
So what happens if you have standard signage in your office park
Yeah,
and it's no longer meets the zoning?
yeah,
And so you have one tenant who leaves, and now you have to take down their sign,
and the whole,
right? And now, you probably might not have to take the sign down, but you certainly have to pay to put one back up,
yeah,
all right? So now, you're gonna have standard, except for the whenever someone leaves, it's gonna be a different one. And we do, we're a big landlord, we don't want the signs coming down. What we want is a sign that can be reused by the next tenant, so we're not going up 4 stories every time, putting in a new sign.
Yeah.
There's also, especially in town, where you have the broken windows theory. Do you want to see empty storefronts? No, sometimes you just want to have, a
Something
mock
there.
store or whatever. Now you're going to have signs, and sometimes having a sign of someone who's not there or is better than,
not having a sign.
for rent and, 5 for
Yeah.
rent signs 100 feet apart.
True.
This is also going to apply to signs that you can't even see from the street or someone, you have to go on our property to see our sign on West Park Drive or our sign on Technology Drive or something like that. So, not everything is downtown
Downtown, yeah.
or Route 9. And I strongly oppose this one, because it sounds like a perfect solution to something that's not a problem. There's no advocacy here, and I haven't been to the planning board meeting, but what's wrong with the way it is now? And, a lot of times people we leave the sign on the building, because if we take it down, we're gonna have to, comply with the new zoning and, the whole rigmarole, whereas now, if it's a new panel, IBM leaves and we put a new panel for, the tenant, and if the tenant leaves, we put a new panel that says for lease Caruth Capital.
Yeah.
Also, I'm thinking there are ways around it, that, okay, if a tenant leaves, and we know you're not gonna get someone in 30 days, that's a ridiculous amount of time. Even if you got someone right away, it would take 30 days,
make a
to get
sign.
in or whatever, do the lease. So we would just put our sign up there that says for lease Caruth Capital, or someone else would do that as well. So, it's unenforceable, there's an easy
Yeah.
way around it, and it's a perfect solution to something that isn't a problem. So, again, I recommend that, not knowing, a lot of the important things that are in there, I would say, we recommend an amendment to, delete the sign thing. It sounds like a lot of work for the town for no benefit, right?
If I could, I mean, I'm not a fan of overregulation, but I see what goes on in some of our abutting communities, and there are those who want to draw a line in the sand and say, all you that have this type of sign, that's going away, okay? And I just feel like incremental changes at a time when there's a change of ownership, a tenancy, or something like that, that's not overly restrictive, keeps that from happening someday in the future. For example, box backlit signs is an issue in a neighboring town, and they have, people among them who would just like to change everybody's sign and just say you can't use that anymore as of a certain date. And I know that would be a fight, but it just seems like if there is a painless, incremental way to get towards a standardization, that would be good. Obviously, pylon signs, one tenant leaves, you don't rip the pylon sign down.
Yeah.
That's crazy, So there should be, just like there is with a damaged sign, 35% barometer, that it's, if 35% of the tenants happen to be out at any given time, well, you might look at it, but, that you could build in safeguards to keep it from being, onerous.
And some tenants,
Yeah.
a lot of tenants, especially the big tenants, they want the signage. They go, especially retail on Route 9 or whatever, if there's a grandfathered sign, that
There's
Thank
value.
you.
that
Free
has
advertising.
real value. I mean, look at billboards. People pay money for signs, right?
Right. No,
You know,
I'm with you. I don't think 10 for rent signs in a row help anybody. So,
Yeah.
I would just like to throw that out there that in the case of overreaching in the future, incremental change towards what everybody would like to see for signage would be something that this board, I think, should weigh in on.
Yeah, I would like to add that somewhere else in the article, it states, these revisions are not substantive in that the meaning or intent of the terminology is not altered. These revisions update the bylaw to be consistent with state law and statute or make terminology consistent with contemporary language. The intent of this article is kind of what Fred was saying, is wordsmithing and correcting inaccuracies. So this change that Zach has denoted is a meaningful difference, and it just seems like it's trying to be slid in here, and that's not appropriate. There should be a completely separate. As a matter of fact, we've had specific discussions about a change regarding signs, a lot of discussion about it. So the fact that it's kind of getting slid in here with pages and pages of changes is inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I think we request that it be removed and be discussed at a future meeting as its own potential change, so that people can fully review it.
I totally support that. What Todd said is there's not enough detail here to give an educated opinion.
It seems like it's too big a change for the intent of this article.
Right. Is the projection signs in that article as well? Or
That is a separate article.
See, I
So-
do fully support that. I think that helps with the, more pedestrian, call it traffic, and I think that for their downtown area, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would definitely, I don't know how others feel, but I would support that. This, I'm with you. I think it just,
If I may make one
What-
more comment on that, please.
I was just going to add that I think the change is slighter than, we might be thinking. It only applies to non-conforming signs, so it doesn't extend to if your sign conforms with zoning. It doesn't say anything about that. It says previously a non-conforming sign would have to be removed after 30 days of abandonment, or if it was destroyed by 35% or more. Now it would be once a business closes, a non-conforming sign must be removed immediately, and any new sign must conform. So I think really what's kind of at question here is the 30 days and that period going away. But, it's not like any signs have to come down. I think it is less.
it's still, true enforcement of that bylaw could pose some issues for somebody that has a non-conforming multi-tenant pylon sign.
Mhm.
I can't support that. No, I know Fred says, well, is that, is he really gonna enforce that? But if somebody complains enough, you might have to, right?
Yes.
So,
So if I may, so the impetus of this, and I don't remember if you recall, Basically, Jim Robbins spoke about this a while back.
Right.
What happened is the design review committee went through the downtown areas. In downtown, part of it was the Bay State Commons. So if you recall, they showed a picture of the old package store or a paper store, I think, that was out of business, and the sign was still there and blah, blah, blah. And that was kind of the impetus of the beginning of this conversation.
So you would have to go onto private property to even see that sign?
Well, yes.
Probably, right?
Part of it, too, is some areas are easier to find out if they're vacant or not. Some of the office parks and blah, 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 those, I don't know half the time when vacancies happen out there until somebody comes for a new fit-up, so,
Right.
anyway.
Okay, so Article 32 is the non-substantive, kind of call it changes to the language.
It's the reorganization.
That does not include the signage, right? So,
No,
No.
the projection signs and the transfer of authority of, sign review in downtown from the Historical Commission to the DRB are Article 34, the next article.
that's projection signs and review?
And, yeah, the transfer of authority
Right.
from the Historical Commission to the Design Review Board.
See, that's a new thing. I mean,
I think we can
it's not
support
something
the
we
change
talked
in
about, but
language.
that doesn't bother me. I
Right,
think
no,
that's
no.
consistency.
No, I
I
agree
think
with
that
that.
makes better. That makes more sense. So, and then 33 is the one that has the more substantive changes as well as the
Yes.
signage language that we just talked about.
Yes. I believe it has or,
It has two sections. 33 has two sections. So one is the shorter section with the non-substantive changes, and then there's this 70-something specific, more
Okay.
substantive changes.
And I think if they deal with it later, and it's something that the downtown, you want to kind of have a uniform signage, or you don't want to have junky signs, everybody's spending money for a nice sign, you have a couple people with, trashy looking things, and, I can see that, but, why extend it to the whole town,
Yeah.
especially office parks? And
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about other towns, we have warehouses in Framingham that we have to pay for them to come and review the signs within the warehouses that are facing each other, totally invisible from the road, and it just really annoys me, that we have to pay for them to come and look at our signs that no one can see but the tenants, or in a warehouse.
All right, so this changes really, it goes from 30 days to 0 for
Yeah, so
non-conforming
it gives you no
signs.
chance to reuse the sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm unsure why, 30 days seems reasonable.
So we could if somebody wants to make a motion, it sounds like we're all in favor of supporting Article 32 and 34. And then the first section of Article 33, which is the substantive changes, but excluding the second part, which is .70, I believe.
The first part is the non-substantive changes.
Non-substantive changes.
So if you look at, I'm just looking
See,
at-
we don't have copies of the article, so it makes it kind of.
My
feel like there's
apologies.
stuff- Even,
In-
So-
even the fact that there's a change, not that it's big, but the change from the Historical Commission to,
The plan,
yeah.
plan
Yeah,
review.
if we could
Sign
vote on
review.
something now, just
Yeah.
saying take out the signage part, and then we can finagle the actual section and the wording or whatever. If we agree
Yeah.
conceptually, is that something we can do? And
I mean,
I
I think
mean-
Sean said we could ask amendments, correct, to this?
Yeah, we could, rec an amendment that number 70, section 8.2 G2, that change be removed.
So to be clear, though, somebody would have to make that I believe, would have to make that motion on the town floor, too.
Right.
Just the recommendation from this board wouldn't get it
Right,
done.
right, no, we understand that, but it just shows that we're not supporting it.
There are 75 changes too, so if you haven't looked at the other ones, then
Yeah.
you might not be ready to vote in support of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for time, this is gonna sound not great, but we're coming up on town meeting, what, next? The
25th.
25th, I know, 2 weeks, sorry, my brain was wrapped around there. It might not, we're not gonna meet again between now and that time, so maybe it's in our best interest not to not have an opinion, but to not vote in
Yeah.
support of it, I think, because there's a lot of changes, and if we put our name behind you said 70 changes. I don't know what they all are, but, I'm sure some are minor, and there are probably two or three that will come back to bite us at some other
We-
point potentially.
That, yeah, I don't think we have to vote. I think you're absolutely correct. But if we want to take it a step further, though, and
Sure, we don't.
show that we don't support says Section 70, I think I would.
I mean,
I'd
we're
be
a
open to that.
business
Yeah, I think that-
Yeah.
committee here, it's,
And
Yeah.
just not take a vote on the other.
Just because it's so vague, that if we don't know about it, how could I expect the person sitting in town meeting to understand, this information that shows up on Saturday morning to vote, on an issue that they spend 3 minutes on?
and we can recommend that it be taken up, later by itself, too. It's, we don't like it, and
Yeah.
we feel it should be taken up separately.
We could vote to make a recommendation that item 70 of Article 33 be removed.
Do you want us to go grab copies of the warrant? I mean, I don't know if you have time to go through it, but, so you can see it.
Well, I do, but I don't know about
Yeah,
anyone
we
else.
can, whatever you guys want to do.
All right, let me go see if
I
there's
work in
copies.
town, so.
Thank you.
I mean, is it well, and is it a simple, just like one section by itself that we can just say
Yeah.
except for .7 or something?
So we might want to think about our motion here, how we'd want to word this,
Yeah,
I think,
so
because it
with
doesn't
the-
matter what she brings up.
Yeah, you
we
could,
can
but
read
once you go
every
through all
change in the-
Yeah, so
73 of these, you might go, yeah, number
That's the
18
problem,
too.
if we say, hey,
Yeah.
we support everything else, right?
We
Yeah.
haven't read it.
Oh, wow.
It sounds like the word changes should be almost a separate article from everything else. And it,
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so talking to general code and remembering that, and I guess I should have mentioned this, general code actually did have legal counsel. That's part of the thing, is that they were advising us from a legal standpoint. We didn't separate out, and that's why there's 75, because even a word change, there's no telling whether somebody believes that's substantive or not. So the working group thought there was maybe a dozen or so, the sign being one, that would be we considered substantive, but anybody could, even select board to select men, or vice versa, I'm sorry. Some people might consider that substantive. So the 75 weren't broken out into, what we really thought was a change to the bylaw, as opposed to wordsmithing.
yeah.
So you really have to go, what the intent is, my understanding is at town meeting, there'll be a separate document that outlines all 75 or how many items there were. So somebody could read through those and object to either all of them or just one specific one.
Okay, we can share 'em. Share down there, I can,
So,
share down with Mark, he
I
definitely
don't think we
wanted
could
to.
really say we.
Yeah, I'm
I
good.
just looked,
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's,
share one.
this
Yeah,
all
we can
kinds of
share one
stuff,
here.
and it's not easy, it's, delete this and add this, but if you don't have the actual document in front of you, so I would be very cautious about that, but, I could say, I think we could say we don't recommend that particular clause, and not really vote on the other.
I guess the only problem,
I mean, we're
the
not-
issue is
we're
that
not
the
approving
town's
or
gonna.
disapproving anything else, right, so.
Yeah, I guess, but the way you said, I guess our opinion will be something people might use as a weight to decide, like, on what their decision is, because like I said, most people that come to town meeting, I'm sure, aren't reading Article 34 and 33 to the level of, usually from the town meetings I've sat through, people come with 2 or 3 items on the agenda they hit a vote for, and the rest are, usually pretty, I make a decision, yes or no, on the, on the basis, not any of the merit of the article.
Page 26.
What page?
Oh, no,
It starts on 26.
26.
An old article,
Oh,
so.
I see.
about this,
Page
you're not
23.
in the town meeting.
Page 26 is
Average
that's what we're talking about.
And
To say we're
somebody
against-
asking them to read it.
Yes.
Acceptance of the
Because then someone
zoning
agrees, they're gonna
bylaw,
still
and
make a
then
vote. At the end of the
33
day,
is
it's
the
gonna be
I
yes
don't
or
wanna
no.
hold lease reviews.
And they're gonna go, okay, zoning changes, I don't know the business, I don't care.
Deletions of
You know,
items
zone
are
downtown.
in the documents, right? Here you go.
It's like when the financial planning board comes out of the
It
financial,
doesn't-
and they say no to something and on anything, then people go, okay, well, these guys had our interest for this in mind, And then and I guess the average person hears zoning and doesn't care. You know, they don't know the business, and they don't.
Presumably EDC has studied this.
Yeah, exactly.
Sean, you're right, it does appear to be slid right in there.
I mean, and I think for some of these, it may be that, maybe that is the actual bylaw, and they're just, it never got updated, you know, so it's hard to say. Maybe that's the state's requirement, and it's being slid into the town. Are some of these state, or they're true enough, it mentions true enough with the state.
Yeah, some of them mimic the 48 language that,
So I think a good example of that is congregate housing. The
Yeah, you know
definition
what?
for that
Number
changes from
5.
being 60 plus to
They're
62
changing
plus.
parking space
I don't
from
know
350
factually, but I would
feet to
assume that that is to mirror like a,
state.
some kind of affordable
I
housing
don't know what way
requirement.
this applies, like, is this, did they just change it from 3 per thousand parking to,
no,
you know?
no.
5
That-
per thousand?
That was just because the arithmetic didn't work out.
Oh, okay.
We require a 9 by 20, which is 120 square feet. The old one was, I don't know where the 350 came from, but
I know it's changed, but there was no provision for, compact parking.
correct. We don't have any of that in our parking.
Yeah.
That is true, some bylaws do, but that would be a much more substantive
Yeah.
parking
Okay,
regulation.
so you're not changing the parking ratio, that's good.
No.
Yeah, there's no way you can go through all this other
No,
stuff.
No, it's way too
Yeah.
nuanced. We don't even know what some of these things refer to.
No, I mean, if you don't have the full bylaws in front of you.
That's correct.
If you wanted to vote on it and set up a second meeting before town meeting, the planning board is coming to the select board meeting on the 14th and presenting the articles because they haven't heard them yet. So you could view that meeting and then have an additional meeting if you wanted to have a vote.
Typically,
I think that-
boards will meet like right before town meeting, so if town meeting's at 9 AM, they'll schedule an 8:30 meeting to handle any last minute business.
I think it might be wise, because I think our input on this, like I said, the average citizen comes to the town meeting, you know, relatively informed, but has 2 or 3 topics they're really there to vote on. And a lot of times, you know, you start talking about stormwater management and all the other things, and they, you know, a lot of the other things are just yeses, you know, and it kind of just moves through the process. And I think having our yes or no on this in even a firm way would be important, I think, to say that we're either, as a business community, we're for this or against it very clearly, so they can at least think that we're educated and gave our opinion, not just a few minutes of us reviewing it over,
Yeah.
you know, 10 minutes, I think is
Yeah.
important.
Now, you'd probably want to confirm that you're able to get quorum
Right.
for that meeting, because I think Christie and I will probably be at another meeting at that time.
Yeah,
So,
and I won't be here, so I don't know if other
Do you-
people
or-
are available.
I mean, it's worth it. Do we want to schedule a meeting next week at this time? Actually, when's,
It would be it would have to be the 15th or after.
right, so wait, what's today? The 8th? The
27th.
7.
21st?
We could do the 21st as a Tuesday
21st.
morning. I don't know. I'm
I'll leave it
available.
up to you.
If
I
we-
won't be
people
I'm
here.
feel
available
this
if you guys want to have a
important
meeting. Not available.
I'm also curious, Fred, do you know off the top of your head, I wish Jim were here, with this large-scale solar, number 73, on page 2032? That's always been a pet peeve of mine, 33 by 33 foot.
It looks like it would just allow it in the adult entertainment district, is my understanding.
Yeah, there's only
There we
like
go.
one lot that it allows. It's my favorite lot in the world. 'Cause you can sell marijuana, you can do adult entertainment stuff. There's a car dealership there now, so you can buy a car or two, I suppose.
Wow.
It was you in Westwood. They asked if they could make our building the adult entertainment center, and Todd was kidding them. He said, well, can we get a liquor license with that? Right, was it you?
I think that was just a grammatical mistake in what was originally voted in,
Okay.
if I recall.
All right.
Plus, it goes to you, you'd want more solar, so now we can have it in that one district.
One lot.
Mark's gonna buy
And the
that
earth
lot.
removal, I have to look at what that one is.
So, again, I'll
mean-
leave it up to you guys. I won't be here, so.
I mean, how many people do we need for quorum? I guess that would be the
We need
first
6.
six. And you know, if we looked at meeting even some other day that week, even if it was I don't know if we can get space, you know.
We
I
also
always-
can do a hybrid meeting as well. That's still allowed. So if some folks can join, you know, at a different time over Zoom, and there are a couple people that can still come here, that would work.
So the point of this meeting is not to just get rid of this section, but to go through everything to see if there's anything else we object to, or?
Or ideally, I think it would be good for the board to take some time offline to review, maybe line by line, and come into that meeting with opinions about where we want to, look, where we want to look specifically in the bylaw, vote on whether or not you want to support the whole thing, or whether or not there are certain sections which you would request to be amended, and then, prepare a letter which whomever will be at town meeting, I believe, Mark, that's
me,
going
I
to be
guess,
you this
yep.
year, will read into the record when they're discussing the article.
May I recommend that we do have something, we're not sure about the other, 70 articles, but we know we don't agree with this. So I recommend that we vote on this today to say we don't mention the other stuff. We just don't support
This,
70, and it should be dealt with separately at a different time.
I think that's a great idea.
And then, if we find something else that we disagree with, then we can maybe follow through with the other meeting, but if we're fine with everything else, then we can just leave it as done today with the one thing we don't like.
That's a great idea.
That makes sense. 'Cause if-
Do you want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we state that we do not support Article, what is it, 33 you said?
33.
33,
Section,
item 70, section 8.2G2, that we do not agree with the change, and it should be dealt with as a separate item at a separate time.
I second that.
Okay. Alexander, yes?
Zeph, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Bagden, yes.
Varro, yes?
Keo, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Williams, yes.
Riley, yes.
All right. Great.
Great. Now, if you flip to page 33, Article 34 would amend the zoning bylaws, section 8.2, which is the sign bylaw. In summary, it would allow for projecting signs in the downtown business, downtown planning overlay district, historic district, or gateway 2 district, and it would transfer the authority for sign approval from the Historic Commission to the Design Review Board.
I mean, it's,
I'm good with this one.
it
I
makes
don't know,
sense.
yeah.
They do
Yeah.
everything else, so it
Yep.
makes sense to streamline this, so. So we want to support, so I guess,
You wanna make a
unless, a
motion?
motion to support Article 34.
I'll second. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
No, Article 34 covers it.
All right, Alexander, yes?
Zeph, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Bagden, yes.
Varro, yes?
Keo, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Williams, yes.
Scott?
Riley, yes.
Thank you. All right. And then,
So do we want to come back quickly and talk about when we want to meet again?
Oh, 32. Okay, that was the last one. Look at 32 again.
Article 32.
just, just reorganizing and renumbering the zoning bylaws, right?
Gotcha.
32, that was just the renumbering and
Yes.
rewording?
Reorganization.
And no substantive changes to the...
No, the changes are included in that next article.
Yeah.
Wanna make a motion?
So, again, motion to support Article 32 to replace the zoning bylaws as stated here in the article.
hear a second?
Second?
All right. Alexander, yes?
Zeph, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Bagden, yes.
Vero, yes.
Keo, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Williams, yes.
Riley, yes.
All right, great. Thank you all very much. I think that wraps up our agenda item for discussion and vote on support of articles at the town meeting.
Yes.
We are way over our time here.
Okay.
I know we wanted to talk, we've had this on our agenda for a couple months now, the EDC Business Assistant Grant Program. I know we have some new faces on the EDC, and there were some questions brought up about the procedure and how we allocated funds last year. And since we're kind of in a holding period with the grant program, we thought it might make sense to take a look at everything and reevaluate everything. Why don't, if people are in agreement, why don't we take the rubric that we have and maybe kind of take a look at this over the next month and come back prepared to discuss it next month? And I was hoping, I know Sandy had some concerns, so Zach, maybe you could email this to her too, so if she's
Yep.
at the next meeting, we could get her input on this and anyone else's. But any other comments or anything that anyone wants to?
Can I just?
Yeah, please.
This is sort of related to our last agenda item as well, but Article 38 in the warrant is actually a new article, and it's the removal of the
Oh, that's right.
business grant program in the bylaw.
Yeah.
So again, that's a funding mechanism that we can no longer use. I just wanted to make sure that no one was surprised by that, because we do have to take this action to remove that revolving account. And you still have that other article that would fund it through free
Right.
cash.
Thank you for
Yep.
catching that. So we should obviously vote to support this one. We've had discussions about this. We all understand why we need to do it, right? So, okay. Anyone want to make a motion?
Kenny will make a motion to support Article 38 to amend general bylaws revolving funds at town meeting.
Second by Zeph.
All right. Alexander, yes?
Zeph, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Bagden, yes.
Vero, yes.
Keo, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Williams, yes.
Riley, yes.
Great. Thank you all very much, and thanks, Christy, for catching that. So back to the EDC grant program, we're good about kind of putting it off till next month.
Well,
If
just a
everybody
couple
can
of things
spend
that
some
I
time.
wanted to introduce before we do so, as food for thought while we take a month to look at the rubric and think about the grant program. I did, related to the article to fund the EDC grant program for the next year at town meeting, I presented to the Advisory Finance Committee on that article. They strongly encouraged me for the second time to look at metrics for success and metrics for impact tracking for the grant program. I think overall they're very supportive of the grant program and its mission. In fact, the biggest feedback that I got from the Advisory Finance Committee was, it'll be a lot easier for, us, the EDC, to expand the grant program in the future or to give out bigger grants and make the case for that if we had some way of showing, quantitatively speaking, the impact of the program. After that meeting, I had a one-on-one meeting with the chair of the Advisory Finance Committee, kind of as an extension to brainstorm some ideas for how we might do that and sort of what the Advisory Finance Committee's vision for that might be. I think, and this is a bigger conversation, which is why, I'm introducing it now so that we have time to think about it and then, ask questions offline. But where we kind of landed was thinking about trying to prioritize funding projects that are where the impact is more easily tracked. Like, there are some projects where it's really hard to say what the impact, like for example, specifically new businesses can be difficult to measure the impact because there's no baseline, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't fund, grants for new businesses, because those have a sort of, I think, a very good purpose and effect. But we may want to consider, especially as we look at the rubric, assigning different weights to projects where we think that we can, very easily track the success and think about what some of those things we might be tracking are, keeping in mind that a lot of the businesses that receive these grants, one, that the grants are smaller, and that the businesses that receive them are small businesses that, you know, may not have the means or resources, you know, to do a ton of reporting or, you know, provide us with the same level of information that somebody getting like a $500,000 grant from the state might be able to, you know, demonstrate.
I think that's a lot easier to do with an existing business than a new business, because a new business they need everything. You know, and the gentleman that came in from the liquor store in West Meadow, well, I need cooling, I need, you know, refrigeration. Well, you need it anyway, so, you know, but yet the Lindsay Taylor proposal was, I need pedicure equipment, and she could track how her business improved due to that particular service or something like that. So I don't know if you can apply it across all levels of business, but it would be nice if you could earmark a project for it.
Yeah, or I mean, the way that I had sort of been brainstorming with the Advisory Finance Committee about it would be, maybe we think about the several different types of projects that we can fund or that we do fund with the grants, and then we think about for each of those different types of projects, whether it be like a new product or a new piece of equipment or a new sign or new seating, you know, how we might ask those businesses to track over a couple of months or, you know, a year or whatever time frame that would be, what the impact of that is. Like we talked about, for example, the Nurse Farm grant that they got for the, you know, kind of outdoor area. You know, could we ask them, well, you know, so you've added more area, so theoretically you should have more customers. So, you know, have you made more sales in June of 2023 than you did in June of 2022, like just by number of like swipes on your POS machine, something like that. I don't know how far down we want to go down this path. I think it would be good to have, you know, something. And obviously I don't think we're going to have it tomorrow or even at the end of the next meeting or maybe even after the end of the next meeting after that. But I do think it could be beneficial, especially as we think towards having to go to town meeting every year to ask for money for this program, having a way to demonstrate, you know, the kind of impact that it provides. And
Well, maybe you could have subcategories, and you could be, new businesses are just, you know, startup funds, and existing businesses could be enhancing an existing service or creating an all-new service, you know, A, B, C, and at least give them some guardrails to say these are the types of things that the board looks at favorably, you know, something like that.
Filling vacant space in
Yeah.
town, you know?
Yeah, I think just even just a
Just give
metrics
this,
of, a metrics of what you've done, you know, even just following up with the last 25 businesses we gave whatever to, 500 or 1,000, $5,000 to, what'd you do with it? Are you still here? You know, are you growing? You know, just as a business as a whole, you know, that's all. It's sometimes it can be as simple as, you know, I look downtown right now, there are fewer and fewer empty facilities here, and that's great. I don't know about outside on Route 9, there's probably a lot of empty office parks, but that's, the world is, you know, turned a little,
Yeah.
you know, backwards right now. But I think just showing even that we've brought 10 new businesses to town, and they might not be Amazon, they might be, you know, might be us, or it might be, you know, Holly, but those are the businesses that, you know, that when you do the video in town, it's nice to show the Amazon building, but everyone wants to see the little shops that live in your downtown area. So I think just showing that we're growing both sides of that, I think, and, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to have a dollar figure at the end of it. Sometimes it could just be the impact on the community as a whole.
I just have a comment. I think this is just going to require some
Follow-up.
really significant thought and really just digging into it a little bit, because it is difficult to measure the metrics and say, well, this is, I've increased sales by, you know, 5% due specifically to this. So I think we just need to give that a little bit of thought. I like what Dave was saying about kind of, we've done that a little bit, but putting it into buckets almost, and not separate criteria for both types of businesses, whether it's a startup or an existing business, but something along those lines, I think. I just think this needs a lot more thought.
Certainly.
Yeah.
One of the things that I had also expressed to the Advisory Finance Committee is I think it's, you know, these are really micro grants, if you think about it
Right.
that way.
Get $500, you know?
And, you know, I think a lot of the typical metrics that, you know, they seem to be eager to see are, I think, more challenging to demonstrate and to, like, you know, I guess honestly tie back to, you know, a micro grant than,
That's my point, yeah.
Yeah.
and, you know, in my view, I've thought, or at least in the first couple years of the program, you I've found that where the program has the most impact is sort of anecdotally on our reputation as a business-friendly community, and word of mouth leading to word of mouth, among small business owners and entrepreneurs that, Westborough is open for business, is friendly for business, has a grant program to support small business startups. I think that provides us a lot of value, and I think it's really hard to, take something that's more conceptual like that and then turn it into, numbers and figures. I would also be open to, if we wanted to keep discussing it and develop a set of ideas, or early ideas or issues and challenges, I would be open to inviting somebody or, maybe one or two people from the Advisory Finance Committee to a meeting to, discuss these ideas with us. The reason why I specifically elevate this conversation now is because we will have to go back to town meeting. We will have to go back to the Advisory Finance Committee every year to secure these funds. And, I know that they, based on my 2 prior experiences in front of that board, I know they will be asking for metrics and figures and numbers. They're financial people. They want to see financial results. And so I think we should at least give it some thought.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
I just was going to say that I like that idea of having 1 or 2 people from the Finance Committee coming and speaking a little bit about, brainstorming or thinking about what specifically they're looking for, because it is such a small program.
I think that's great. Totally support that. I thought they had a representative that was supposed to come to our EDC meetings anyways, but maybe if you could reach out to them and see if they can send a couple to, whether it's the next meeting or the meeting after, let's get it on the agenda.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of basic metrics that we could probably track. Here we specifically talked to new jobs created. I think also we really sort of refocused the program last year to small businesses. You mean effectively, right? Before that, larger businesses could also respond. But I think if we just tracked going forward, the number of grants that were distributed, and then how many of those businesses are still around next year and the year after that, and if, because there are metrics as to how long small businesses survive and how well do these businesses do versus what would be considered the average. But that's not a every year statistic. That's a 5-10 years from now, what does it look like? Because I don't think you can say measurably from last year to year to this year what the change is. It really has to be a longer time span. And those guys ask for data on everything. You just can't come up with, so.
And it's billboard money to boot,
Well, I didn't want to get too far into this, but basically it's the return on investment.
Yeah,
Those
you
are
want to
asking small businesses to do that. We had the concept, but having them do that can be difficult. I think we recognize that. If there's a way to do that, and the suggestions, obviously, from the people on the board, Zach would be more than happy to listen to
I think
them.
just even following up with the businesses we've granted money to already and just ask, could you write us a little letter of how it impacted you? It might not be a physical dollar amount, but if you get a letter from someone that owns, the Coop or something and says, we got $10,000 or what do they got, $7,500, whatever it was, and it made a huge difference in a building our new restaurant in town that allowed us to open, and like I said, it might not be measurable in a dollar amount, but it's measurable in the feel of the community once again, which is.
So I did reach out to all the winners in the last year or so that I thought would be able to provide the most favorable testimonials for the program. I included them on a slide that was presented to the Advisory Finance Committee and harkened back to that slide multiple times when pressed about the impact of the program. I do not believe that the qualitative evidence meets their threshold.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah, we did have several quotes from several, I think, substantial projects that have been related to the EDC grant program, about how it impacted their business, about how it let them do something they wouldn't otherwise do, that wasn't looked on as favorably as quantitative data.
So then maybe we have to look at the metrics differently and how we quantify who gets the points and make sure that there's some measurable aspect that we can get out of it.
Yeah.
You know, not that we want to start putting those kind of restrictions on businesses, but at least if we put some kind of measurable asset on there, it would help us to distribute the dollars bigger and more wisely, I guess.
I totally agree. I came in, right after the rubric, I think, was issued, and I applaud you guys, because I can't imagine doing that without it, but, there's that risk of people, saying that the awards are arbitrary or something like that, and I think the more specific that this document is, that the better, and I think it's, basically 3 categories. You have to, redefine the rubric to measurable criteria. The grant distribution, we talked about limitations by award period, how many applicants, all that type of stuff. And then, the categories of why you're applying. Are you expanding an ongoing business? Are you introducing a new service? Are you a startup or something like that? You put all that stuff together, I think you'll get the answers you need. And I don't want to suggest a working group, but I'm glad to be on one if anyone wants to get together and just dig into this document.
So do we have to motion a table, or we just move it?
I don't think we have to take a vote on moving it to next month
Okay.
to discuss it. It's just a discussion. Unless others feel differently. All right. All right, next on the agenda is the, an update on the EDC's Year in Review Awards.
Okay, got 3 sort of major updates here. The first is that we have confirmed a keynote speaker for the event on Friday, April 28th. Unfortunately, the Lieutenant Governor is not able to make the event or any of the suggested dates that I shared. In her place, we have invited and she has accepted Secretary Howe, Yvonne Howe, who is the new Secretary of the Executive Office of Economic Development for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She is a member of Governor Maura Healey's cabinet, and we are very excited to have her come to the event and deliver the keynote address on April 28th. That's update number 1. Update number 2 is that we released and closed the poll that was open to the public for 3 award winners, New Downtown Business, Civic Pride, and Hall of Fame. We received over 1,000 votes on the online poll, so there was a lot of energy and traction around it. The winners, which all won with a substantial margin over the second place finisher, was Cha-Cha and Beans for the New Downtown Business category, Westborough Connects for the Civic Pride category, and Ullman's Ice Cream for the Hall of Fame category. And what I'll say is that for each of these award categories, there were several, like 2 or 3, in some categories 4 or 5 businesses that received over 100 votes. So there was a lot of very qualified and very exciting businesses that were nominated. Obviously, we can't give the award to everybody. I wish we could, but I think a testament to all the great activity that's happened around Westborough recently and over the last 20 or 30 years in the case of the Hall of Fame Award. I'll be reaching out to those businesses today to let them know that they have won the award. So feel free to reach out to them and share your congratulations. And then third, for the Year in Review Award celebration, I do need several volunteers for several items. I am happy to coordinate that offline or coordinate it now. The first is for each of the videos, I need an EDC member to appear in the video and to share, they usually it's like, and you can watch the past year's videos for an idea of what it's like, but you get on camera and you say, a little bit about the business and why they've won the award they've won. For the 3 awards we had through public vote, I let people leave comments on why they thought their votes should win. So there's a lot of material there for some of the businesses that won about that you might be able to repurpose and use. I'm happy to work with you on a script or whatever, but it's really short and kind of informal. So if folks want to sign up now, that would be great.
I'd be glad to.
Does anyone care which award they do, or can I assign you randomly?
I'd like to do Connects. I've worked with them before.
Okay.
Cha-cha?
Anyone else?
If you need it, I'll do one if you need, I don't care.
I do
How many do
need,
you need?
I need 6.
Oh, you need 6.
You can put me on one, you just have to write me the script and I'll read it.
Okay, great.
Now, Mark and I will each do one.
Yeah.
Great. And then 2 other folks.
I think you got 5, right? And
That's
then-
fine.
Whatever you
So
need.
five
Oh,
already.
I need 5. Okay, wait, Mark, so Mark and Mark? Mark for,
Yeah.
okay, sorry. I got
Mark,
confused
Todd,
by
and
the.
Mark.
I was volunteering Mark as well as myself.
Okay.
These volunteers, the
Just
marks
like
on both sides.
And then Fred. you-
Yeah, if you need me, I'll take one up.
Great. And then similarly, it would be ideal, as we know, this event does cost some money to put on. In the past, we have, EDC members have reached out to some of our larger corporate businesses to inquire about sponsorship opportunities. I have materials that I can share with you from last year. I believe we need probably about like 8 sponsors if we ask for $200 from each sponsor. That's what we asked for last year and is within the budget for the event. Is anyone willing to initiate some of those conversations? And I can send you, the contacts that we used from last year.
Yes. Community Advocate will donate, and I'd like the materials as well, please.
This is one where ideally, if each one wants to ask one business or ask one person, or if there are folks that have particular relationships, I can share the sponsors from last year. Last year we had Bowditch Attorneys, Kelleher and Sadowski, Bowden Construction, Middlesex Savings Bank, Atlantic Management, James and Ball and Company, Release Wellbeing, Penta Communications, Avidia Bank, and Karuk Capital. So, does anyone have any strong relationships with any of those?
Keller and Sadowski.
I'll ask Caruth Capital.
See what you can do. Thanks.
I'll ask,
Interplast.
Oh, the
Actually, I'll ask Atlantic Management as well.
Scott said he wanted plastics as well.
Great.
Scott?
Did you hear Scott, Zach?
I did, yep, Interplast. And,
I'll do a video.
and I believe that is all of the non-staff members of the board who have volunteered. So that's great. I will reach out to Sandra Kearney offline and just kind of assign her whatever is left,
What about the actual awards?
like the physical awards
Exactly.
themselves. That comes from the money that we raise for this. We usually order them from Crown Trophy.
Right.
I have started the conversation. I haven't sent them the proofs yet, but I called them like a couple weeks ago to say, hey, remember us, we're doing this again.
Because I know last year we had a committee, but I don't necessarily know that we even need that, like a subcommittee.
Yeah,
to organize. I mean,
I think because last year was so
Last year was too much.
unique in that we were reinventing the event for a new space, that the working group made sense. But this year, a lot of what I've been doing to prepare for the event is kind of, lifting what we did from last year and just repurposing it for this year, which I think is a little bit more straightforward. But the folks who appear in the video will be the ones that give the award to the event, like during the event, like you will stand up and present the award to the business that wins it.
So can you just send, once the list is completed as to who's going to do which video, can you just send it out to all the
Yes.
members so they're aware? And then,
Likewise, I will send out the information on the sponsorships, and I'll
Yep.
send you a copy of the email that we sent out last year.
perfect. Thank you.
And what time on the 28th is it?
It's 7:30 a.m. is registration or / check-in. The program begins at 8 a.m. and usually wraps up before 9:30, like between 9:15 and 9:30. And then we booked the room until 10, which gives folks time to mill about and do some informal networking.
Are we lining up a photographer again?
Yes. Anything else on this? I have nothing else on the year in review, if folks are good.
It's a Friday, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, great.
On the agenda.
Q9, 495 Chambers Business Expo.
Yes, more volunteers. Every year, the EDC has a table at the Q9 495 Chamber Business Expo. It's a great event, a lot of exposure to businesses in Westborough, but in the area more broadly. So it's good for building relationships with Westborough-based businesses, but also, building some relationships and, kind of quote unquote planting the seed with businesses outside of Westborough. This event is on a Tuesday, April 4th, and it goes from 4 p.m. To 7 p.m. Typically, we try to have 3 folks from the EDC there at the event at all times. Last year, we did 2 shifts of an hour and a half. So there were some folks there from 4 to 5:30, and then there were some folks there from 5:30 to 7. I'm usually there for the full duration of the event, and the reason why 3 is a good number is so that you can have like 2 people kind of at the table, manning the booth, and then 1 person walking around, kind of making relationships with people who haven't stopped at our table. If anyone, and we don't need to volunteer right this minute, but by 2 weeks from now, if folks are able to sign up, I can send out like a sign up form. I think last year I did a doodle form for people to sign up, but we will need 5 or so volunteers, or really 4 or so volunteers from 4 to 7 on April 4th to help man the booth. Last year we had brochures and things to give to folks. This year we're going to have brochures and some kind of fun item like a pen or a stress ball or something like that with EDC branding. We're also looking into updating our pull-up banners because those have gotten a little dated at this point. But that'll be on the 4th. I'll send an email out today or tomorrow asking for your time. No need to be there the full event, but either an hour and a half from 4 to 5:30 or an hour and a half from 5:30 to 7 would be very appreciated.
All right.
Easy peasy.
Great. Anything else regarding the expo?
That's all.
All right. The Community Development Department report.
Don't have much to share today. The programs and events, we're hoping to kind of relaunch the downtown beautification project sometime this week or next week. We had met with the Garden Club back in February to kind of check in on the project from last year, discuss how many more flower pots could be supported this year, and we'll kind of open that up on the EDC's website and in other media and communication in the next week or so for folks to start ordering their flower pots for this year. Regarding events that are coming up on March 22nd from 4 to 5 p.m., the Metro West Chamber of Commerce is having a ribbon cutting for Lionsgate Spiritual and Wellness Center in Downtown Crossing Plaza. On April 4th is the Q9 495 Chamber Business Expo, and that's all I have.
Okay. Any other business?
Oh,
Zach?
I don't know if now is the appropriate time for this or after the meeting would be better, but Todd and I thought it would be a good idea to, get something for Jim, as you may know or probably know, he's retiring at the end of the month. He's out on vacation this week, which is why he's not at this meeting. He is our longest tenured board member. He's been on the EDC since it started. He's seen it grow, from a group of volunteers going around talking to businesses, trying to figure out how the town can better position itself to, fully staffed, more professional, department with a grant program and other programs and policies that it runs and manages. He's been very obviously instrumental in the town's growth and development over the course of his career here in Westborough, spearheading several, very momentous projects like Bay State Commons, the TOV, several MassWorks grants. And so we wanted to get something for him to celebrate and recognize his service to the community. I have reached out to Crown Trophy to get pretty much the same plaque that we give the award winners at the Year in Review celebration, a special one for Jim in recognition for his service. It's cost $61. I'm gonna kind of front the bill. If folks would like to contribute $5 to that would be much appreciated. And you can either bring cash or a Venmo to the next meeting, and we can figure it out then. Additionally, I prepared a letter, which I don't have printed just this moment, but I'm going to go run downstairs, print it, and bring it back after the meeting for folks to sign, just recognizing and again thanking him for his very impactful career on not only on this board but on this community as a whole. And so Todd and I were planning to take the letter and the trophy and present it to him at his retirement party, which I think Kristen had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. And so, it will be our way of celebrating him for a great career.
Mm-hmm.
That's
all I have.
Thanks, Zach.
One other quick thing is that Holly and I got together about a week ago, and we discussed the possibility of creating a downtown promotion page in the paper that could be distributed via email, social media, all stuff like that. So, and Mark and I talked about that some time ago. So, it would be very cost effective, but yet it would be a way to get everybody to unite downtown and just keep reminding people what a great place, and what great stores there are down here. So we're going to continue working on that, and we'll report back.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you guys for taking the initiative.
All right, if no other business, do I hear a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to adjourn?
I second that.
All right, Alexander, yes.
Zeph, yes.
Bagden, yes?
Kenny, yes.
Varro, yes. Keo, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Williams, yes.
Like I keep this, or do you want to-
Rayleigh, yes.
All right, thank you, everybody. See you next month.